Ryan, thank you so much for being here. I have wanted to interview you for a really long time. You just really represent what it means to build trust successfully. You've built an incredible brand. I love all the things that you talk about related to building trust, the future of the industry, the role of AI as we evolve, and for those who don't know, Ryan, he is the president and co-creator of Neo Home Loans, also co-created the Art of Home Ownership and has had a really successful mortgage business. You've originated almost 2 billion in your career, correct, Ryan?
Yeah, somewhere around there. You kind of lose track after a while.
So yeah. So the reason I share that is because what he shares, it really works. And I think a lot of times when we're talking, especially about building trust, it feels like a soft skill or something like the psychology of buyers is something that's like, oh, nice to have, but it has been really successful for Ryan. So Ryan, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Love what you guys are doing and can't tell you how important it is, not just for our industry, but for all the communities that we serve. I think a lot of your data supports that as well.
Yeah. So speaking of, and for those who are on the call, feel free to type questions in the chat, raise your hand, we can draw you in. But I have pulled up some questions, especially related to some of the data that we released recently in the Next Gen Homebuyer Report. We have surveyed over 9,000 millennials and Gen Z since 2020, and our annual report is 1,000 millennials and Gen Z, but we've been tracking this distrust over the last few years and seeing how, like every year, we see very, very low trust in loan officers and real estate agents. And this year, we dove in a lot deeper into what it really means. And we see a lot around this fear of being taken advantage of. One stat was that only 1 in 8 next gen buyers believe housing professionals won't take advantage of them. So I'm curious, Ryan, when you hear that statistic, what is your reaction to that? And is it something that you kind of see out there?
Yeah, I generally think that that statistic is a byproduct of the fact that there are just candidly so many kind of low producing real estate and mortgage professionals, right? I mean, 71% of 1.3 million realtors didn't help one family last year. Only 90 or 96% help 20 or less families. So if you're a real estate professional, that means 96% of the time a person talks to you, you're probably going to be in a pretty scarcity oriented place in your business. And the same statistics are very much true in the mortgage space. You could look at a lot of companies that, they have 3,600 people on their roster, 3,000 of them did a loan or less. And that's just because they're quote unquote hanging their license, so they can do a loan here and there. And you just, I don't know how anybody could, if the consumer really had that information, like if I was interacting with a mortgage or real estate professional and I looked at their production and I realized that they don't really do this full time or they don't help a lot of families, I would be very concerned. Are they looking out for my best interest or for theirs? Right? And what type of financial literacy can I expect them to have in their life that they could then transfer to me? What type of long-term commitment will they have, or are they really looking more to sell me a house or to sell me a loan? And I think that largely a lot of people on this call are full-time mortgage professionals, maybe real estate professionals, and we need to do a better job at highlighting what that means, right? And highlighting the commitment that we make to the consumer. Because those statistics, of the Gen Z and the millennials, one of the biggest concerns is they don't feel ready. They feel confused. They feel uncertain. They feel unaware. And we're even seeing this in our numbers, right? Like we're missing consumer buying patterns. They're going online. They don't want to talk to a lender or a realtor until they absolutely have to. Right. And so that's why they go to our website and get pre-approved in a matter of minutes, but then they don't necessarily want to talk to anybody, right? They just want the information. And then they want to try and figure out what to do with it because there's a fear of what's going to happen. And so we need to meet the consumer where they are. We need to meet them online. We need to tell a story that is very different than what we've told for the past 40 years. And the most important thing that we need to do as real estate and mortgage professionals is we need to make a higher level financial commitment to each client. I need to say, Kristen, I'm going to be helpful for you and your family for the next 30 days. But what I'm going to do for you for the next 30 years will blow your mind. And I want to show you how we're going to do that. And I want to walk you through what you can and should expect from our team for the next 30 years because buying a home is really not that hard, right? It's just paperwork and money and figuring it out if you can. It's the next 30 years is what you're afraid of, right? The next 30 years
Yeah.
is what makes you nervous, is what, makes you feel like you're doing this on your own. And we have to change that as an industry or we're just going to race to the bottom.
Yeah. I when I was buying a home in Los Angeles, this is in 2020 or 2021, I just became really terrified of making a wrong decision because it was a way bigger purchase than my
Yeah.
first home, and I felt like every like loan officer, my dad is a loan officer, like everyone I know in like a lot of my friends and family are loan officers, and I still was just like, you're paid to tell me it's a good idea to buy. Like it just I had a really hard time pulling the trigger on actually looking because I had so much fear that it was going to be a bad investment. But I think it also pairs with that, like I'm trying to get as much information on my own without asking for assistance because I'm not sure, like it feels like the incentives don't align. But I think that's something you have to show people, And so I dropped the Next Gen Home Buyer Report that we just released last week. And in here, I had just shared this one that's about like this lack of confidence that you won't be taken advantage of. But there's also this fear that the housing system is going to work against them. And we dig into some other trust data, but I wanted to share this one other that there's also really low confidence that homeownership is going to be a good investment. In 2021, it was people were really confident, like housing prices were going up and it was looking really good. But 2026, that's dropped by more than half. And so I'm curious, how do you start you started to share a little bit of like kind of your script, but like what allows you to open when you do have the conversation with someone, how are you able to like relieve some of that pressure of oh I'm not going to trust you or I don't know if this is a good investment, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is something that I am so incredibly passionate about. If what you just said didn't exist, I probably wouldn't be in the mortgage industry anymore, right? Because, as I was really growing my origination business, the thing that helped me go from what I would consider like an average mortgage professional to kind of one of the top in the industry was the amount of time I spent with each client. And it was the education that I gave them. And I didn't just show them the upside. I showed them the downside. I said, here's historical appreciation of home values in your market. Let's take that and double it. Best case scenario, right? We get another 2020, 21, 22. But let's also go worst case scenario. And let's say that we have, stagnant home price growth, right? Which means that maybe home prices come down, but then they come back up a little bit. I told my personal story. I bought my first home in August of 2006, which is like the second worst time since the history of the Great Depression to buy a home. But then I showed them the recovery pattern from it, right? I still own it today, what it's worth today, how it's built wealth, how I have renters in it. Taking that time with every client and presenting to them what their upside is and also how to protect the downside is what gives people the confidence to step into that space. But most mortgage professionals don't do that. They take the application, they get them the pre-approval letter, they hope the consumer already has made the decision or is confident enough to make the decision. And then when they don't, they're like, oh, I guess they just decided not to buy. Like that's literally our job. Not the realtor's
Yeah.
job, right? Not the media's job, not their parents' job. Our job is for people that we believe should be a homeowner because we can look at their numbers, we can look at their income, we can look at their assets, we can look at their job, we can look at the future of their market. if we genuinely believe someone should be a homeowner, our job as a mortgage advisor is to remove fear and anxiety and uncertainty and replace it with confidence, excitement, and motivation. Because the human brain won't do that on its own. People aren't taught how to do that. And once my real estate agent started seeing, like, I could send people to Ryan that aren't sure about this, and an hour later, they'll want to go look at homes and write offers. But I needed to spend that hour with them. And that's really where, we are going really deep into AI and automation to say, like, I need everything off of the mortgage advisor's plate except for that, right? Spend more time with the client, educate, give advice, give guidance, protect the downside. But most mortgage professionals just don't have that time, right? Because they're wearing a million hats. They're pre-approving their own files, their own marketing, they're lead generating, they're doing 1,000 things. And so I talked to some of the highest producing mortgage professionals almost daily or weekly in this industry, and I'm still shocked that some of them tell me like, "Oh yeah, I get on, I spend 10 minutes with them, and then they kind of move down this conveyor belt." And I'm like, "God, man, like what a disservice." And yeah, you're closing a
Yeah.
lot of loans, but there's a difference between production and performance. And as an industry, we need to move more towards shining a light on people that perform well as opposed to people that produce well.
Well, and I think there's so many people that would be in the market today that or leave because they feel that they're not ready when they really are. Like, I don't want anybody being pushed into something that they're not ready for. And I think you're very clear. I love that you talk about showing the downside, like you're being very transparent. But there's a lot of people, and we put this in the report too, that there's a lot of people that think they need to be super qualified to be able to buy. Like there's the overqualification myth. I'm gonna share my screen and of like people think you need a W-2, 9 to 5 job. There's so many people that are gig workers that would not be able to, fall into that. And then the excellent credit, the 20% down payment, having no student loan debt. People think you can't have any student loan debt to qualify. So there's a lot there that I think just on the qualification side, and then plus all the emotional psychological barriers that we're talking about of just feeling anxiety and overwhelm. And I think for those who really do want to grow their business with this market that's very skeptical, overwhelmed, anxious, and don't have the right information, like spending that time is going to grow your business exponentially. I mean, I'm curious how you, like, you started talking about AI playing a role here, but how do you, like, do you see people spending that time and it, either increasing their business or efficiency? And how are you approaching helping people to actually have those better conversations?
I mean, we could talk about what we're doing in the AI space all day long, right? We could literally have hours of conversation around that. But the premise is that we want our technology to do all the things that are low value human tasks, right? So we can elevate the real value of the human connection and the necessity of that education and conversation. Because to your point, all these people in their own heads, it's much easier for them to tell themselves, "Oh, I can't because of X, because of Y, my student loan debt, I don't have 20% out." Like, I think there's a big portion of people that are really using those things as an excuse. So they don't have to do the work. Like a good example, um, my daughter is getting into singing and I'm learning how to play guitar and I'm trying to figure out how to become like a music producer, right? Like I'm downstairs trying to set up this garage band thing and I'm like, you know what? This is like it's not easy, right? I have to try and figure out all these things. So I just stop and I tell myself a story as to why I should stop. It's not different from a prospective homeowner. They go online, they get 20 different pieces of information. They are trying to figure it out on their own. They can pull a soft pull, and somebody might approve them, somebody might not. They hear from their friend or their parents or somebody else. And with an overwhelming amount of information, people just shut down, right? They're not seeking. information and they don't even know where to get it. Like you could literally survey 1,000 people and say, would you call a mortgage professional to get advice on if you should buy a home or not? Almost 1,000 of them would say, no, that's not what mortgage companies do. Mortgage companies just give you a loan when you already know that you want or need one, right? They're just salespeople. Would you call
Mhm.
a realtor to say, if let's say you're a realtor, would I call you and say, hey, Kristen, I know you're a real estate agent. I'm really struggling to figure out if it makes sense for me and my family to purchase a home. Can you help me understand if this makes sense? Nobody's going to make that call because 1,000% you're going to say yes, they should. Because to your earlier point, the incentives are misaligned, right? And
Mhm.
over 1 million real estate agents didn't sell a house, so I'm pretty sure that you're going to say, yeah, you should buy one. Completely not regarding if that's really true for that family or not. The first thing we have to do is start telling people a different story. Like, what do we actually do as an industry? We don't just close loans. We don't just give customer service. We don't just educate you on what mortgage program you should use. We will actually help you understand if this makes sense for you and your family today, tomorrow, a year from now, not at all. And here's why you can trust in my advice and guidance. Look, I helped 35 families last month, but what you don't see is the 30 I told it's not the right time, and now we have a plan and a strategy and a timeline for. Nobody highlights that, right? Nobody talks about how many families you put on a path or that you created an awareness for or that you help them understand the generational wealth opportunity with their parents and their children and how that plays into it because we don't talk about that. I mean, for God's sakes, go online and look at Instagram or LinkedIn. It's all look how many loans I closed. Look how much money I made. Look at my W-2. It's like, can we please stop that? We are ruining this industry by celebrating production, not performance and impact.
Oh, this is so good. I'm just so I want to create kind of like a commercial of what a good loan officer looks like. And I know we've been talking a little bit about how to elevate the industry in this way, but I mean I hear so many people, especially first-time home buyers, that just don't know. Like they my friend called her bank and got a loan officer and she was like, yeah, he was nice. And I'm like, that's cool. He was nice, but you do not know what the difference is between this guy and someone like you. It's just, and it was hard for me to, I think, accurately even explain that. And I want people to understand what that difference is. And for us as an organization, First Home IQ, mission to make sure that we're getting as many people who are willing to do that to elevate their game to be building trust in this way because that is the way that as an industry we're going to evolve in a way that creates more impact and I think better outcomes for our society.
Yeah, one of the first ways we can do that is teach people how to evaluate lenders. Like you just said, you have a hard time explaining why the nice guy at the bank may not be nearly as valuable as the mortgage advisor who is financially literate and helps people understand long-term generational wealth. So we've came up with because I literally did this exercise a couple months ago. I went online and I also did it in Claude, I did it in ChatGPT, and I said, you know, how can I find the most valuable mortgage lender in my market? Question mark. What do you think came back? Rate, cost, rate, cost, rate, cost,
Mm.
rate, cost. Why? Because that's literally all our industry ever talks about, right? We've become effectively a rate table. And so we came up with questions to help our clients shop mortgage lenders. Because what we do is when we do a consultation with a client, we ask for them to commit to utilizing us for this process and we explain why. The majority of the time, people are like, yes, we're in, we're happy, like we're excited, let's go. But every now and then, we get people that say, "Oh, I don't know, like I want to make sure I'm getting the best rate. I haven't really shopped lenders. I want to, talk to others." And we say, "Look, Kristen, I think that's a really great idea. I really encourage you to strongly evaluate every lending opportunity that you want to. But my fear is that you don't necessarily have the information to do that well. I'm going to send you a list of questions that I would encourage you to ask every lender that you talk to, right? Because you're only typically going to know to ask them what their rate and what their term is or what their costs are. So I'm going to give you questions that will help shine a light on all of that. And for anybody listening to this, just message me on Instagram or LinkedIn, one of the two. Just shoot me a message, drop your email. Happy to send you this list of questions. And Kristen, I'll send it to you if you guys want to put it out in the
Okay.
world as well.
That'd be great. Yes, let's do that.
Um, Instagram is the real Ryan Grant. LinkedIn, put in Ryan Grant, and it just should come up. But this list of questions is specifically designed to shine a light on the difference between a real mortgage advisor and a loan officer, right? The loan officer at the bank, if asked these questions, will look like an amateur. Consequently, if the mortgage advisor is asked these questions, they are literally going to knock them out of the park and create confidence and create excitement with that person. And then we just say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, if you I want to help you with this. If we're not the right lender for you, I'm not going to I'll help you find the right one. So let's follow up. Today's, Wednesday. Let's follow up on Friday. And I would love to hear your feedback on how all of your other lenders that you're evaluating answer those questions and how it made you feel. And typically, it doesn't take very long. We get an email on Thursday. Hey, we've called some lenders. You're in. You're it. Let's go. Right? But that's how we have to teach the consumer to evaluate the difference between a mortgage advisor and a loan officer. And we need more mortgage advisors to do this, which is why I always give away this list of questions.
I love that. And we'll send those questions to the community, but I did drop your Instagram in the chat. I I mean, I did have an experience with a loan officer that was absolutely fantastic, did some analysis stuff with me, and then I ended up buying a tenancy in common where he didn't have the product to be able to help me there. But I sent his name to 20 different people in a text thread saying, this is a fantastic loan officer, like a bunch of people that were thinking about buying a home too, and it's like if you put in that time, people will be loyal to you even if they don't actually transact with you. So I really think that that supports someone feeling like you're not actually, you have their back, even if they choose to go with somebody else, and that as a result, they're going to be loyal to you, even if they don't work with you at that moment.
Yeah, some
So
of our best clients, some of our clients that have referred the most people are people that we've just put on a plan, right? That we say, hey, look, today this does not make sense, but in 6 months we think it can, and here's how. Because everybody else just said no, or even worse, they tried to say yes and like shoehorn them into buying a home when all we had to do is just say, look, we don't need to do this today, right? It actually could benefit you to prepare. That way we can make you look like a cash offer, right? So today we would have to jump through a lot of hurdles. You'd need loan contingencies. You'd probably need some time to close, which means you're going to overpay for the price of the home, which means you might need a longer term lock. Like it could work, but if we just start preparing today, by summer or the end of summer or fall, we can make you so much more of a valuable and a realistic home buyer that you'll get better terms. And they're like, oh, great. Like, do you know how much somebody would appreciate that and feel that you actually care about them and their family, not just closing a loan? Of course, you're going to get more referrals from that person than if you just said, oh, we can't help you, or oh, you really should do this and try and pressure them into it today, especially if they talk to somebody like me first, right? Then
yeah,
anybody else they talk to after is going to, they're going to be challenged, mainly just because of the questions we ask, right? Because of the advice that we give.
yeah. To your point earlier around the overwhelm, I was actually just speaking at an event talking about women, next gen women homebuyers, and women tend to have lower confidence around finances and higher overwhelm. And I think a lot of that in lower trust. So there's a lot of skepticism. There's fear that they're going to make the wrong decision. There's more fear around like, all of these are exaggerated around the fear that this isn't a good investment. But overwhelm is another area that we really looked at in the Next Gen Homebuyer report. And I'm curious how you approach some of that. Like this is 6 in 10 are overwhelmed, and we've found that it results in disengagement. So to your point earlier around you just kind of decide to step back, 42% say that they put off talking to professionals because it feels overwhelming. 37% avoid thinking about all of this. So it really does matter what I think there's a segment of the population that would come into homeownership if they didn't feel this overwhelm. So I know some of that is creating the homeownership plan that you're talking about, but what are some other ways that you are, or maybe expanding on that way, but that you are helping people kind of get back online instead of their brain, like, kind of shutting down into the overwhelm?
Best way is just storytelling, right? Because when somebody has reached that point, they're making an emotional decision, not a logical one, right? We just have to understand the human condition of that experience. When people have challenging finances, what do? Do they call financial planners? Do they start budgeting? No, they just stick their head in the sand and they hope that they start making more money and magically it works itself out. Same concept here, right? Is that they're not making a logical decision to disengage. They're in an emotional state of fear and uncertainty and anxiety and frustration and fill in the blank, right? When we start telling stories about the families that we've impacted and people that have felt like them, that have engaged with us, and we've helped them create a plan and a strategy and a timeline, right? We have to invite them in to an experience that's not a sales experience. We have to invite them into an experience that is consultative, that is curious. So we train on what we call a dreams and goals call, right? It's essentially our intake call. Right? And if somebody, like you can call 5 loan officers and you'll get 99% of those conversations are going to be almost exactly the same. When people experience our dreams and goals call, there's so many questions that are emotional questions that are not on a 1003. Right? There's so many questions that try and get to the heart of where their concern is, where their uncertainty lies, right? Where their real fear is. Because until you uncover those things, the logic of filling out a loan application is a moot point, right? We're trying to put a square peg in a round hole at that point. And so we need to be open to the idea that if we're doing our job well, like if we are a really great, proactive, future-oriented mortgage professional, we should be having more conversations with people that don't know what to do than people that do. But that's not true for most of us. Most of us wait for the referral from the realtor who's ready to go. And the real estate
Yep.
agent doesn't even know, right? Like I asked somebody, like, I've had 74 conversations in the last 120 days with agents that have helped 100 or more families in a year, right? Because we're building partnerships with them. And I always ask them, hey, when someone says they're not ready or they're not sure, how often are you connecting them with your financing team? And they go, we're not. And I'm like, you realize that money is the reason they're not doing this, right? If money were not an issue, we'd have 100% homeownership in America. So I need you to start telling our story when your client says, I want to buy a home, but I'm not ready. I don't know if it's the right time. I don't know if it makes sense. I don't know if we should. Your script as a real estate professional should be, I completely understand. This is a hard thing to wrap your head around. Chris, and I want you to know, as a real estate professional, my job is not to convince you to buy a house. My job is to make sure that you have all of the information and education you need to make a confident decision about becoming a homeowner. And the best way I know how to do that is to get you in touch with Ryan on my financing team He's going to have a conversation with you. He's not going to run your credit. He's not going to ask you for your documents. He's not going to sell you a loan. He's just going to ask you really important questions. He's going to give you advice and guidance. And by the end of that time together, you'll have the clarity and the confidence you need on if we should do this today, tomorrow, or never. Whatever the outcome is, I've done my job well at that point, right? If you remove all of the sales and the pressure and all that stuff as a real estate professional, we can have way more conversations with the I'm not ready crowd. But for some reason, our industry has forgot what our real goal in life is. It's not sales.
I love that. So that was the real estate script, and I would imagine there's a very comparable one with loan officers. Like, what is do you have loan officers say something similar in that first conversation? That's like, hey, my job is not to force you into home ownership. It's to evaluate. Like, what does that look like?
100%. One of the first questions we ask is like, if you were, and we teach our team this, is, you know, let's say, Kristen, you were referred to me, or let's say you found me online, or you searched AI, right, and you're reaching out. I would say, Kristen, what are you trying to get out of our time together today? Is it confidence on whether you should do this or not? Is it, clarity on kind of the financial implication of this for you and your family? Have you already kind of wrapped your head around the fact that you can and should do this, and you really want to get more towards like the real numbers and details? Like where are you in your head right now? And we'll just let them talk. And that question creates an openness that most people never get, right? 99% of loan officers, and you guys will realize I use the term loan officer somewhat as a derogatory term. When you hear me say mortgage advisor, I'm talking about what we should be. When I say loan officer, I'm talking about what we have been. Right. So 99% of loan officers will just say, "Oh yeah, Kristen, I'm glad you called. Tell me about like what purchase price are you looking at? Where do you work? How long have you been there?" They'll just jump right into the application because the sales leadership of the last 30 years has taught them that the credit report or the application is the goal because that makes them, it's like it's all BS. Like this whole industry for the most part, and it's not, it's changing, it's evolving little by little, but most leadership or mentorship or coaches in this industry have been taught by salespeople. And until we realize we are advisors, and most of our conversations will not turn into an application, and that's okay. And then you get into the concept of, well, if most of my conversations don't turn into applications, how do I have time to really scale a business? And that has everything to do with technology and team building. All right. If you have the right people on your team and if you have the right technology, you literally won't do anything. Like our mortgage advisors, if I see them working on a loan or doing a pre-approval or, in their email, like I'll throw their computer out the window. I'm like, you have literally two jobs. Consult with clients, educate, give them guidance, create plans. And then when they go into contract, do a contract meeting to make sure that they know all the things that are about to happen over the next 30 days, create confidence. But like if you're doing something outside of that, you're doing it wrong. And that's where people
Yeah.
really struggle, right? As loan officers, they do what they have to do as opposed to what they should do.
Yeah, I think that this focus on opening up the consumer from the very beginning goes such a long way towards, again, like the referrals and comfortability and reducing the overwhelm. When I have so much financial anxiety, like always. I mean, I had all the
Everyone
education
does.
in the world. Yeah, everyone has their own things, and I think that money is such a taboo subject. It's hard, like it's easier for people to talk about politics and sex than it is to talk about money, and I
Yeah.
think the majority of people are feeling very overwhelmed when they come into conversations. But I have this aura ring, and one time in the middle of okay, nice, in the middle of a financial planning conversation, my aura ring thought I was napping because I was so overwhelmed. My body had just shut down, and it was like, yeah, we're not here anymore.
Wow.
But But I was kind of assessing like what was going on there. And it was just it's this fear that you're going to make a bad decision, and like, oh, I'm not going to understand something. And at the end, I love my financial advisor, but at the end, it was just about, okay, what's that one step we can take? And that was kind of what got me out of it. It was the unfreezing of like, okay, I just need to do this one thing. And I always talk about like helping people uncover the thing that is keeping them up at night. And you'd mentioned something about, uncovering the uncertainty or what it is that people are stressed about. What are some ways that you help people kind of unfreeze when they are kind of going, and you may not notice this, but like continue to open to the conversation and instead of going into information overload?
We just meet them where they are, right? And that we train on that a lot. I tell people we have the most financially literate, highly educated, emotionally intelligent mortgage advisors because that, most of this job is just to get someone to understand, I don't know much, but I do know this person. It feels like they care about me and it feels like I can trust them. Once you've reached that point, almost anything is possible, right? Because information will flow more freely. They'll feel safer, kind of talking to you about some things that they might have not just anxiety, but shame or embarrassment about.
Yeah,
And look, it doesn't matter.
totally.
Like, there's billionaires that are embarrassed of their financial situation because they're looking at the people that are above them and they don't feel like they've accomplished enough or achieved enough. Like, this is not a binary thing. Like if you have money, you feel good. If you don't have money, you feel bad. Everybody is on a spectrum of some level of financial insecurity. When we cross that barrier of, okay, I'm going to be your advisor here. I don't have a dog in the fight, right? One of the scripts that we teach our team to say and ultimately believe is, Kristen, I hope you know, I genuinely don't care if you buy a home. Now, that probably comes off challenging to hear, because obviously our goal would be to help you not just become a homeowner, but ultimately to become a very successful, well-rounded, generationally wealthy homeowner. But I don't care if you do that today or tomorrow or 6 months from now or a year from now, right? All I care about is that you get all the information you need to confidently move forward to the next step, right? So we can go as slow as you like. We can go as fast as you like. So I'm going to start by asking you some questions. And these are questions that if you've ever gone through this process before, you probably have never been asked by a mortgage professional. You may not have even ever been asked by any financial professional, but I'm going to explain why I'm asking them along the way. All right. So in our dreams and goals call, when I start to ask you about something like life insurance, and you say, "Oh, I don't have life insurance," I say, "Look, you don't need life insurance to qualify for a mortgage." It's kind of crazy that we are one of the only countries in the world that allows you to get a mortgage without life insurance, which I think is inappropriate. But the reason I'm asking is not because it matters for you to qualify. The reason I'm asking is because I don't want to help you buy a home and turn into a very non-successful or unsuccessful homeowner, right? So having the protection that you need to take on this debt and to add this liability and to manage this asset, I just need to know that information so I can build it into the overall like plan. And when we're done with this call, we're going to have a whole nother call where we do about an hour long consultation. And I'm going to build everything out based on the information I get today. So that's why I asked you that question. Guess what? They call another loan officer and they just dive right into the 1003 and they don't ask him that question. They immediately think this person doesn't care about me. This person could give a shit if I, am doing well or not. They're just trying to sell me a loan. All right. So like we have to create that obvious awareness of the difference between a mortgage advisor and a loan officer. And that just takes practice. It takes skill set. It takes belief. And it takes slowing down, which again, most loan officers don't slow down because they have so much on their plate. Team building and AI takes it all off and it lets them be incredibly focused on what matters the most, which is that person sitting in front of them.
That's so good. Yeah, I feel like the way that we are the scripts that you're sharing, we're going to put those into a playbook for our ambassadors. So for those of you who are ambassadors on the call, I am curious if you could share for those who are just starting out in their career or are maybe having a harder time, it's a little bit harder to be like, this is a, I don't care if you buy today, but how do you train and coach people who are earlier in their career or lower on the production side?
Yeah, everybody that is relatively new or might be, at that two families a month that they're impacting or less, my encouragement would be whether it's finding a company, finding a mentor, finding a leader, like they need to have a blueprint to get you from where you are to where you want to go. And if you're not actively learning that blueprint and then executing that blueprint and you're trying to do this all on your own, it's really, really hard. It's harder today than it was 15 years ago, right? When I first started in 2011, I didn't have that. I literally just ran around to open houses and I got realtors to like me enough to send me some clients. I was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing, but I still was able to, get business because price shopping wasn't as competitive, right? Like online awareness wasn't the same thing. There was no AI. Like somebody couldn't put my LE in ChatGPT and tell me all the good, bad, and compare it to the national average. Like being successful as a mortgage professional today is infinitely harder than it was even 5 years ago. So if you don't have like the modern mortgage advisor playbook, you got to get it, right? And that's just where mentorship, it's where, being a part of the First Home IQ community is going to help substantially because there's so many people that are, doing great things in this community that will be helpful. Um, but I think the problem that most are trying to solve for right now is they've kind of come to the conclusion, well, I'm not going to do a lot of loans because that's just not my current state reality. So I need to make as much money as possible on the loans that I do, which means that you're going to forego everything else. You're going to forego investments in technology. You're going to forego mentorship and leadership. You're going to forego blueprints for success. Um, you're going to forego a value proposition that's supported by an organization. And I would ask anybody, please don't solve for money. Solve for impact.
Mhm.
Like you
Yeah,
just
I
said it, like
love that.
you sent
Yeah.
20 referrals to somebody who focused on impact with you, right? If that I'll say mortgage advisor, it sounds like he was a mortgage advisor. If that mortgage advisor that you worked with, if you felt like he was solving for money, you would have never referred him anybody,
No.
right? So we
Yeah,
have to we
exactly.
have to solve for impact and we have to solve for helping as many families as possible. And over time, we all have to be aware that like, we have a blueprint to help 100 families a month. No, not working nights, not working weekends, to be the most impactful mortgage professional you can be in your market, helping 100 families a month. That is a very dialed in blueprint, but it's not maximizing dollars per loan, right? And that's another part of this industry that I really think that we have to start teaching something different. We have to lead differently because this is not about economics per loan, it's about impact per market.
That is so, so good. I want to share with you guys real quick while I want to ask you, Ryan, about more about AI and technology as we start to close out. But for those who are ambassadors on the call, we have updated our platform. It's still a little bit in the process of being updated, but we've added playbooks under your resource library. So if you go in to communication messaging, for instance, there's a playbook that you can download and it has specifically like things that we walked through with Mose on the last one. I don't know why it's not just opening for me, but anyway, it's got like interactivity in there, step by step, what to follow for each of these things, and then and the presentation materials are slightly updated, but I wanted to share that because we'll take the conversation we're having today with Ryan and add a playbook based on with the scripts and everything that he's been chatting about. And if you are not an ambassador and want to access this or even just some of the free resources we have, you can go to firsthomeIQ.com/workshop. Everything that we're doing is really around this idea of how to elevate your work so that you're building trust and leading with education. So, Ryan, I want to ask you a little bit more about the role of AI, and I don't know whether we want to look at this from the operation side or the consumer perspective, but in the research we gathered, either half of next gen millennials and Gen Z feel that AI can give them a personalized home buying plan as well or better than humans. And so, I think everything we've been talking about today shows how to stand out from AI in that way. But I'm curious your thoughts on that, and then also if you can share any insights into how you're leveraging AI or suggesting that loan officers leverage AI to reduce that operational load.
Yeah, this is where, as an industry, we have unfortunately earned those results because most of the time you don't get advice, guidance, strategy. There's no long-term commitment. There's no real differentiation between lender X and lender Y other than their origination cost and their interest rate. So if all things are equal, why not just let AI do it? It'll be cheaper, right? Because we're still not telling the story of what our industry really can be. If we do this right, we like the mortgage advisor not only can be, but they likely will be the most valuable person in a family's financial livelihood. Because 92% of America is not going to connect with a financial planner. Over 70% of people don't have a estate plan, will, or trust. They don't have life insurance. They don't understand taxes. They don't understand leverage. They don't have plans to add to their real estate portfolio or grow their generational wealth. They literally just buy a home, live in it, and pay for it. And as an industry, like one of my favorite questions to ask when I talk to anyone, my friend called me the other day, hey, I need help with some loans. I'm like, you got a mortgage 3 years ago. How often have you heard from your mortgage advisor to help you plan for today? He just laughed. And he's like, that never happened. And I'm like, so we're earning the fact that we're going to lose ground to the internet. And we just keep racing to the bottom. Who can do it cheaper? Who can do it faster? Who can do it for less? Not who can add more value, right? Not who can differentiate themselves from a bot. We as an industry we need to work really hard at getting rid of everybody who doesn't subscribe to the First Home IQ, the value-based, the modern mortgage advisor. Like we have to work really hard to get rid of that category because that category will be replaced. Not a matter of if, just when. And when people start to know how much we care about their future, how committed we are, how proactive we will be, right? How we will not just hope that they become a successful homeowner, but we will grab their hand and take them there. That's when it's going to be really challenging for AI to disrupt that. That being
I remember.
said, sorry, just
No, no, go ahead.
we announced, we just put our app Tin Man inside of OpenAI. So we're the first mortgage company that has an app right inside OpenAI's communication, which means that all we do now is we just talk to our LOS like a human, right? Just on our phone, pull up this file, lock this, do this, send that, and we just run our whole business just talking because of the way our server is set up. The amount of time that saves, right? Not just for the mortgage advisor, but for every teammate on that mortgage advisor's team allows us to just be more impactful where we need to be more valuable, right? So it's not a matter of, man, I don't know how to add that level of value. It's typically, how do I have the time to do that when I'm doing 900 other things? We just can't do 900 other things, right? We have to do two as really forward-thinking mortgage advisors.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that way even in my work. I am all these different roles in the organization, but if I've been able to offload a lot into Cloud Cowork is what I use, and then it frees me up to be better at the things that I feel
Yes.
I'm humanly good at, and so yeah, I love that direction. I I think that as we are closing out, I am curious, you had spoken is I think it was years ago, but just kind of on mental health in the industry. And I feel like when you are focused on impact and purpose and things like that, it does improve the way you feel and work in your business. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I mean, you said it perfectly. Tony Robbins has a quote that says, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And that is probably the most true sentiment of the mortgage industry that I've ever heard. Right? There is a lot of successful loan officers out in the world and to different levels, right? To different extremes. But most of them won't be able to look back and authentically say, I really made an impact in that family's life. Because loan officers don't help people. They just give them loans that they're already asking for. Mortgage advisors, however, who commit to a longer term delivery of generational wealth and of helping people do things they wouldn't do without us, that group is going to look back and say, look at the amount of generational wealth I created for my families that I've served beyond the amount their home went up in value. Look at the safety we created, right? Look at how we helped their parents and their children, not reactively, proactively. And that creates incredible fulfillment, right? We have a saying here, we have a book called The Infinite Game. If you have not read The Infinite Game, cannot stress it enough. But the premise is that we need to wake up inspired with the work we're about to do. We need to feel safe when doing it, which most people in this business do not feel very safe today. And then we need to go home fulfilled with the impact that we've made, right? With the mark that we've left on the world. And when I talked about mental health a couple years ago at that conference, the amount of outreach, right? The amount of people that were like, thank you for saying it. Nobody's talked about it. Like, this is a really terrible industry to be in if you feel like a commodity because you don't feel seen, you don't feel appreciated, nobody hears you, you feel like you're losing ground every day, you question your self-worth, especially coming out of 19, 20, 2021, where we all felt like Superman and Superwoman, right? You couldn't tell us that we weren't God's gift to the financial and real estate world back then because we were all, experiencing financial success in a way that some of us never even would have probably experienced in our lives or even thought we would. So to go from that extreme, pre-AI, when there was way more demand for mortgage than there were mortgage professionals, to the world we are in today, that boomerang creates a cognitive dissonance that says like I thought I was this person. I thought that my community needed me in this way. I thought that the my real estate partners needed me this way, and they're not getting that same feedback mechanism, right? And that lack of production creates kind of this terrible mental loop where you start asking like, where do I fit in? Why me? Why would somebody use me if I'm not the cheapest? Why would a realtor partner with me if they already have a great lender? What can I offer that they don't? Right? Why would somebody join my team as opposed to somebody else's team? If we can't answer those questions, we're going to go home pretty frustrated and pretty scared, not fulfilled. We're not going to wake up inspired. So as a community, we need to help each other. There's not a ton of us left. But for the mortgage advisors who want to lead us into the future, being confident that we are the most valuable, not just mortgage professionals, but financial professionals in the lives of most people is something that is so uplifting, right? It's something we can build around both professionally and mentally.
Yeah. Yeah, loan officers are so uniquely positioned between the consumer, like there's that is the moment that people learn all the financial literacy they should have learned before, and so all of that's coming together at the most important financial decision of someone's life. And that's the point that they do learn. That's why I'm so passionate about education being at this moment. Loan officers are also uniquely positioned as between the consumer and the industry. And so I want to mention if anyone is interested at all in all of this, the impact, all of that is appealing to you. We have a group of loan officers who are going to DC in April with the Mortgage Bankers Association, and we are looking to cover all 50 states. So if you are from one of these states not covered yet, or you want to join representing your state, we're going to have a really great group of people going that are these high impact individuals. We'll be creating a lot of content. So you can go to firsthomeIQ.com/advocacy and sign up. And we'll have social media content being created there. We'll give you guidance leading up to it. But we'll also help you get registered and all of that if you sign up on our website. So if you're interested there, I will drop that link into the chat. Yes, and we do have some awesome people going. Julie, excited you're going to be there. And otherwise, just be a part of this community. Ryan, thank you so much for being on our faculty, spending all this time today talking through your kind of blueprint. This is absolutely incredible. Any last thoughts?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who is on this call with us now, or anybody who might be watching this recording later. I don't think we as an industry understand where the battle is. The people who are on this call, the people who are in the First Home, IQ community, the mortgage advisors, we are not each other's competition, right? Our competition is the race to the bottom. Our competition is what you said earlier, which is, people leaning more into AI because they feel more comfortable with that than they do a loan officer, right? And so as an industry, we need to pull together. We need to help each other elevate to be the most valuable and the most consistent mortgage advisors in the lives of our clients and business partners. So I just want to commend you for being a part of this community, being on this call, spending this time investing and elevating what you are and what you will become. Very few people do this, right? Very few. I mean, I don't know how many loan officers are left, but let's work really hard at getting rid of all of them so the mortgage advisors can really step into the future and show people what this industry can do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks everybody for being on this call. This was absolutely, as many said in the chat, super inspiring. So if you are interested in advocacy, firsthomeIQ.com/advocacy. And otherwise, just join the community. Glad you guys are all here. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, everybody. See y'all soon.
All right. Bye.